Good afternoon and welcome to the Federal Executive Forum celebrating 18 years of profiling excellence in government IT mission programs. I'm Luke McCormack. During today's show, we will discuss best practices with IT modernization programs and strategies in the federal government. With me on today's show are Von Noga, Chief Information Officer, Environmental Protection Agency, Patrick Newbold, Assistant Deputy Commissioner, Deputy CIO, Social Security Administration, Guy Cavallo, Chief Information Officer, Office of Personnel Management, Michael Adams, Divisional Vice President, Public Sector Federal, Verizon Business Group, Jonathan Harmon, Vice President, Worldwide Sales, BMC Software, and Parth Vakil, Lead Solution Architect, U.S. Federal Databricks. Well, we've had a lot of great guidance from OMB, Cloud Smart, the Security EO, the ZTA, Zero Trust Direction, and then, of course, an EO on CX, which I think is near and dear to all of your hearts, and then some TMF funding out there for those that chose to take it. Let's start with you, Vaughn. You had 6 audacious goals that you put out there several years ago, and I know you're still sort of hammering away on that. Give us a state of the state as to where you're at right now.
Yeah, so we're still hammering away at the wildly important goals, as we call them here at the EPA. And one of the ones that we really focused on early on, so I've been in the role about 4.5 years now, and one of the ones that we focused in on was digitizing records, really, and this ties into M1921, which requires federal agencies to move to a digital or to digitize their records, and so where I really embraced this was before this role, I actually managed facilities for the agency. And one of the things I saw over and over again were floors full of paper files, right? And so I was able to actually look at that and actually draw that, hey, we need to do something in this space. So for the last 4 years, we've been working at establishing national digitization centers, 2 of them, which will allow us to collapse all those local digitizations or those record centers that we've got in the EPA facilities, and centralize those and centralize the ability to digitize records. And so that's been forefront for us. In addition to those other things that you already mentioned, which is enterprise-wide logging, moving forward and moving out on ZTA, multi-factor authentication. All those things are very important to what we're doing here at the EPA. And most importantly is how do we enable our employees to be able to do their mission. So really looking at how do we reduce the churn, if you will, associated with just employee activities to get their jobs done, right? So we focus also on things like how do we make sure our employees have the tools they need to get the job done? And something as simple as how do we modernize and make sure that we've got modern laptops that are distributed to employees? And so one of the things that we looked at is how do we move from a very interesting way of budgeting to buy new laptops where you either have dollars or you don't. If you don't have dollars, you can't buy laptops, to a new way of thinking, looking at tools like that as fixed costs, right? So you're able to actually look at, hey, we're going to budget for 25% refresh over 4 years. So employees have and know that they will get a refresh technologies every 4 years. Again, these are a couple of things that we're looking at from a modernization lens.
Just basic building blocks to work your way up that value chain. Patrick, I can imagine that you've got these extensive systems out there reaching out to millions and millions of citizens. A daunting task, no doubt, as you work on that modernization journey to fulfill that promise to all the citizens, right? Give us a state of the state.
Well, thank you, Luke. I would tell you, we are still using that momentum that the COVID-19 pandemic sparked. And, the first 10 months of the pandemic brought about 10 years of accelerated modernization at SSA. In March of 2020, our primary way to serve the customer was face-to-face. And so, modernization helped create new adaptive ways to service the customer. And today, many of those services can be delivered through our digital channels. And most of our customers prefer to transact business with us online or through mobile devices. So one of the things we have done, if you haven't had a chance to go to ssa.gov, we just redesigned our website. We wanted to make it more easy to navigate for customers. It was really spurred by our CX effort. And it's a task-based approach. And we really took a customer-centric approach, and we did the customer end-to-end journey when we developed that. So those new pages and improvements are based on public feedback, and we will continue to kind of iterate on that. But we also manage the system that ensures the right payment get to the right person in the right time, and all of us on the show today or one day are going to benefit from that. So, but those systems are in terrible need of modernization. So to accelerate that, we established a benefits modernization PMO. Their focus is on to modernize those core applications, those core systems, to make them more internet, mobile, accessible, and to answer the needs of our employees who are processing that information. So we're really focusing on our retirement, survivors, and disability systems, our supplemental security income systems, and our Medicare application systems to modernize, and we want to accelerate that. So we recently announced an executive position, if you follow me on LinkedIn, for a chief program officer for that position. So we're looking for a new approach to modernize those systems and looking for some good candidates. We also continue to do other strategic modernization planning to include looking at platforms. We're moving from project to product framework. We're looking at enhance our security, our databases, our structures. And over the past 2 years, Luke, we have continued to evaluate and retire technical debt, right? But what's really driving us to determine which technical debt to target is really a human-centered approach, and that points us to those priorities that we want to focus on. But we're very pleased at some of the progress that we made. We eliminated over 185,000 lines of COBOL code.
Nice.
We continue to do that, and that's going to be a key focus for that new benefits program management office to modernize that and put that on a cloud-based platform. But a lot more work to do, Luke.
Sure, it's no doubt it's always a journey. Good catch on the that customer experience. You have two sets of customers, like every agency. Sort of the promise to the citizens, we'll call it, external, and then of course internal to your own employees. Let's roll over to Guy, who's very familiar with transforming. He did it at TSA. He went over to SBA and did it there. And now he's over at OPM on a journey there to transform and modernize and digitize, et cetera. Give us a state of the state, Guy, as to how it's going.
Thanks, Luke. Third time's the charm, right?
Right.
The beauty of me being able to lead cloud efforts at 3 different agencies is obviously I learned lessons learned each time and was able to fine tune it. It's easy for people to forget, but 4 years ago, OPM was in the process of being dismantled, and with that, we lost a lot of leadership. So I knew for me to be able to make any transformation journey, I had an incredible number of vacancies and leadership positions to fill. So first thing I did was I filled about 25 mid-level and upper-level managers, including creating a cloud lead position and a productivity lead for the agency. So a CIO can only do so much. As you know from your experience, you have to have the troops there to help you get things done. So with that leadership in place, the other thing I saw is that because OPM was in this phase of, are we going to exist? Are we going to go away? When COVID hit, we had 6 different productivity tools in use at the agency, and none of them at the enterprise level. So just think about that. The director of the agency couldn't even communicate other than email with every single employee. And then even within an office, they couldn't communicate from the right side of an office to a left side. So I've broken this into multiple phases. On the end user end, we went to an enterprise collaboration tool. So now everybody can communicate. They can make calls from home. Really changed our productivity. The other thing, being such a cloud advocate, is we created our first cloud, and we have actually in FY22 we moved 28. We either moved or created applications. 28 applications that would have been previously done on premise are now in the cloud. So, I'm a big proponent that the cloud is the future for government. That our role shouldn't be to run data centers. I don't know of a single agency whose sole core mission is to set up and run a data center. At OPM, we are the personnel agency of the government. So I want us to get out of the business of patching old servers and downtime and get into the business of investing as much as we can in our core mission and you highlighted it earlier, Luke. Obviously we support a lot of citizens. USA Jobs is used by over 85% of the applicants that come into the federal government. So we're a gateway, for my friends on the panel to be able to hire staff. But then our other customers are the other agencies that we work with, managing the health benefits program and features like that. Even though I had a big load to work with, Congress decided to give me a new project of creating a postal service health benefit system with a very short timeline. So luckily, by having those new leaders that I put in place, we have our own digital services team. I was able to put people on that project. We are not going to lift and shift the old federal employee system. We are building in the cloud a new system that will, be first for the postal employees, and then later on we'll come back and pick up the rest of the federal government. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say, no doubt that extensive cloud experience that you've been able to obtain has put you in a position to really take that on and deliver it quickly.
Absolutely. And like I'd like to tell our peers, the cloud's been around for almost 19 years now, folks. It's no longer we have to wait because it's too new. You need to get in gear and get going and get out of the data center business.
It sounds like you're on a tear there once again. No surprise. We really do appreciate it, Guy. Michael, we can't do this unless we have absolute connectivity at the highest order, reliable, secure. But Verizon is up to a lot of stuff. Give us a top line as to where you are in helping these agencies enable their modernization journey.
Thank you, Luke. I think what I'd like to get into is kind of the progress we've seen in the government around IT modernization. If that's okay, because I think that's key kind of to the discussion that we're having here.
Sure.
So from our perspective, we see the prioritization from Congress and the administration has around IT modernization, as well as the customer experience aspect of it in cybersecurity. We think it's great. So for the government to be able to help its workforce be successful and deliver the services people need, IT modernization has to be a top priority. So secondly, I think the government agencies are starting to take advantage of increased funding. EIS, or what's also known as the Enterprise Infrastructure Solution contract vehicle, is a good example of that. So we announced, for example, a few months ago, an EIS task order with the U.S. Department of State to modernize their global communications infrastructure and provide IT services for each of the Department of State's U.S. embassies, consulars, and other key locations around the world. So that's a pretty big project. Last summer, we announced a task order for the FBI through EIS. That will help the Bureau modernize and expand its network infrastructure, data and voice solutions. And then a few months ago, we announced three EIS task orders with the Department of Defense to modernize IT communications infrastructure. So we see the federal agencies are taking advantage of the opportunity, whether it's EIS or increased funding in the Technology Modernization Fund or other contract vehicles and programs. I know this is a Fed panel, but we also have some infrastructure investment in the Jobs Act, for example. So that'll help state and local governments. So I'd say that, those are all the signs of progress. And to keep the progress moving forward, I think more needs to be done to give government agencies the flexibility they need to modernize. So to me, greater flexibility and more options are going to be key. And that's what's going to keep us moving forward.
Good points. The funding and certainly EIS landed at the right time to enable these missions. So No doubt that all these agencies are extensively taking advantage of that. Jonathan, BMC software a critical component into enabling this digital journey. Give us the state of the status to how you all are unlocking these capabilities.
Yeah, thank you very much, Luke, for that. And thanks to the panel so far. Really, really fantastic conversations. So the primary focus for BMC with technology like Control-M is how do we help IT operations accelerate their modernization by strengthening their automation and their orchestration framework. So that is our forte and our focus. But doing that at the same time, while providing customers with more freedom within that framework to drive organizational best practices that they're designing and that you're hearing about from a lot of the customers today. So, for example, we're expanding our framework with things like Airflow integration so that data engineers can orchestrate their data pipelines using tools that they know, but also doing it from within an enterprise platform like Control-M, which gives them all the industrialized capabilities that we've built up in a platform like Control-M over the years. We're also focusing on increasing operational efficiencies, which is a big deal. So we're doing that with new file transfer capabilities, which is greatly enhancing the ability to orchestrate both internal and external file transfers within your workflows. We've got to focus on self-service and collaboration. We think that that's a very, very, very significant component to modernization within that framework. So, for example, developers, engineers, they can complete their tasks inside of Control-M without submitting service requests, which probably scares a lot of folks. But it basically means that we're giving them more freedom to do their jobs. They can use the language of their choice when they're building their workflows within the application. And within Control-M. At the same time, we have an obligation to make sure that we are supporting our core, which is IT operations. So we're providing them with quicker and easier ways to enforce organizational standards through new site standard policies so that we've got a good balance between the two. There's a lot more, Luke, on top of that. Look, if you think about the fact is we have to keep pace with such a constant growth of new technology that's supporting the enterprise, that's supporting modernization. So we've got to change the way that we're delivering, for example, new integrations that are coming out of our integration factory team. Mm-hmm. We have to deliver new operational enhancements for ops users. We've got to deliver new business users with new ways to consume our stuff. So we've got a lot of stuff that we've got to contemplate and think about. I think it really reinforces the opportunity and in some cases the real challenge that we have as technology partners to support IT modernization.
And no doubt, if you're going to deliver at the speed of mission, you have to automate some of these processes. So we really do appreciate the capability that you're enabling there. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about IT modernization, transformation. Parth, we're going to go to you and talk about Databricks and how that fits into this ecosystem and how it's being used in these agencies.
Yeah, let me start by saying how, it's a pleasure being on this panel with these esteemed folks. And, what we are seeing as far as modernization is concerned, I want to focus in on what I would call the data estate modernization. What Juan talked about with the digitization effort, what Guy is talking about with building the systems in the cloud, and what Patrick is doing with systems at Social Security, all of that is generating a ton of data. Even some of the initiatives that you have talked about, whether it's Zero Trust, whether it's M2131, whether it's the data-driven initiatives, whether it's DoD decrees, the focus is becoming how are the government agencies going to utilize the data and derive insights from it to drive mission outcomes, to drive national security, to drive citizen outcomes. And what we are seeing across the board is there's a ton of challenges, and it comes from sort of the legacy infrastructure that exists. There's siloed data, The data is primarily structured. There's a treasure trove of data. As Juan said, there's treasure trove of data in documents that need to be digitized, in the images that exist, in the geospatial data that exists. And the government agencies are looking to drive to use all of these data sets and produce outcomes from it. These issues are being addressed now, and we are seeing a spectrum of progress across the agencies that we are supporting today. Some of them are just starting on this data estate modernization journey. Others are more mature. For example, at Citizenship and Immigration Services, they've been at it for about 5-6 years. They've modernized in the cloud. They're using Databricks with the Lakehouse architecture, moving all of their traditional database systems into the cloud. And they've modernized how immigration and the visa system operates. So we are seeing a lot of progress in this regard. We are super excited. And I think Databricks is ripe for the innovation that the government is looking to make.
Yeah, no question. We're seeing that once you get this data into these sort of lake environments, if you will, you can really unlock some extensive capability to deliver on that promise. Guy, I'm going to come over to you and talk about a specific program that you'd like to highlight that you all were able to sort of get over the fence, if you will. And then we'll talk about the future a little bit later in the show, but talk about one that you've already sort of nailed down.
Oh, sure. No, thank you, Luke. One thing I've learned with the cloud, especially for people that are still believing the cloud is way off in the future, is you want to have a success early and prove the value of the cloud. So when I got to OPM, I discovered that our retirement services call center, which is used to support all of our federal retirees, postal retirees, was I can't even put a name on it. It was so poorly designed that a phone call would bounce back and forth between multiple single points of failure. And there was a lot of downtime. And we had, we were called to Capitol Hill to explain that. And I said, well, here's a great application for the cloud. Let's replace it with a cloud-based call center. And Luke, I can tell you, we've had less downtime with our cloud-based call center over a year and a half than we had in a single half day with the old on-premises call center. So also with today's hybrid world of work, by using the cloud, I no longer have to put all of the call center people into a very compact room. They can work anywhere in the country, and which expands our hiring capabilities. So that one allowed me to show the agency that, hey, the cloud can really deliver. The cost is about the same. Again, one thing I recommend to people is don't go sell the cloud as it's going to save you money. Sell it for all the benefits of redundancy, elasticity, the things that you can't do or you're probably not doing on premise. That's really what you pick up with it. So, our retirees today are not being dropped by calling our call center like they used to be. And like I said, that gave me a quick win for the cloud to help reinforce the other moves that we want to make to the cloud.
No doubt increases the reliability and also increases the feature set a lot of times, right? When you get yourself in those modern type environments, which is a great example of the use of this modern technology. Michael, how about at Verizon? Can you give us an example of where you've been working with an agency to sort of, really enable this transformation to happen?
Yes, Luke, thank you for coming back to me on this question. So we've seen a lot of our government partners develop successful IT modernization programs. I've got maybe 3 examples, just really short ones that give you a sense of how we played in this space. For the Department of Energy, we're delivering new technologies and services to help meet their next generation voice requirements. And this involves moving IP-enabled voice services to the forefront of what they're doing. So that's been a pretty good program for us. With the Department of Labor, we're modernizing their legacy network infrastructure, including data and voice and unified communications, video services, and all those enterprise applications for 20,000 users. So you think about that, that's going to result in a highly secure converged data and voice network across 1,000 locations. So that's been pretty exciting. And then on our SLED side of the house, the city of Albuquerque, right? We deployed a real-time crime center in partnership with our Verizon Frontline, which is, I'd say, the nation's best network for government folks to use, a cloud-based real-time response system for them to use there. So, we think those three examples kind of show the breadth of what Verizon has done with a lot of the government partners out there.
Right. And I think you pointed it out, the breadth of what you're doing, right? It's not just sort of the plumbing, it's much more than that. Vaughn, you touched on a lot of things that you are up to over there. I'd love to hear about a specific program that you'd like to highlight that you've been able to sort of get over the fence that's really sort of unlocked a lot of that capability over there that you all have been seeking.
Yeah, so we've been doing, just like Guy talked about, cloud and some of the things that they've been working on OPM. We've been focused on cloud as well.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it's partnership across the agency and working with our business stakeholders. We don't do things in a vacuum. We partner across the agency. One of the things that we did last year is we looked, because our agency is a regulatory agency, we actually receive a lot of data from outside the agency. And a lot of that, those data flow through our central data exchange. That was an infrastructure that was within one of our data centers. Over FY22, the team in our office was able to actually take 184 different data flows and move those to the cloud and shut down the on-premise infrastructure within our National Computer Center. That just highlights, the rapid pace of change within the agency. The other thing that I highlight, and it goes to the term IT modernization, we look at modernization as continuous modernization. And so we are always looking at opportunities within our portfolio of what can we focus on next? How can we reduce the churn, if you will, associated with simple things, how employees get administrative forms processed, right? So other big areas we're looking at is the whole paperless initiative, right? And so we've been focused on identifying platforms by which we can move from a paper-based or a PDF-based way of managing workflow into a workflow system to reduce the churn associated with the administrative burden we put on employees to get their jobs done, right? We want to move that churn away from them so they can spend more time doing their mission work.
Really focus on that very important mission that you have there. And I might say, nothing feels better than to close down a legacy data center, doesn't it? I mean, it really does feel good. Parth, how about at Databricks? Can you give us an example? You touched on some. As these various agencies are modernizing, no question, here comes the use of technology like Databricks. Give us an example of a highlight you'd like to point out.
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of examples to pick from, whether, like I said, citizenship and immigration services, or it's fraud prevention at Medicare and Medicare services, or it's veteran suicide prevention at Veterans Affairs, or the DoD Advana program, where they're collecting all of the data across all three services and driving insights from it, or it's Office of Personnel Management, where they're trying to collect data from, coming in from various agencies around HR, curating it and sharing it back out for folks to drive insights from it. But one specific example that we are really proud of and would love to talk about here is Centers for Disease Control. This is one of those situations that impacted everyone on this panel and everyone listening. We started working with the CDC back in fall of 2020, when the vaccine rollout was just about to start. And what CDC had to do was go from this sort of on-prem mentality with legacy infrastructure to what Guy talked about, moving to the cloud and harnessing the agility of the cloud. And they truly needed to become agile, right? The emergency started with tracking the infections. It moved on to, hey, is there enough PPE for the first responders? To, are there hospital beds that we can use, and how are we going to use them the best way? To, how do we distribute these vaccines so that we can start to get towards the end of this emergency? And for them to be that reactive that quickly, they needed to be agile. That's where Databricks really came in. We first started with a small project where they were having scaling issues. They came to us. Within 2 weeks, we put that system into production. And then come about March 2021, the way that they were modernizing in the cloud, sort of doing more of a lift and shift from on-prem, was just not working out for them. It was brittle, it was failing, and these teams had been working 24/7 for the last 2 years. So they modernized with the Lakehouse, with Databricks, And the one statement that I remember from the architect who was leading this effort was, he said, this will be the first time that my team can take vacation in 2 years. So wow. They were able to drive reports and business intelligence, collect data from regional, from state, at a national level, and generate a dashboard on a daily basis to make decisions on where the vaccines were going to go. And they were distributing this to the regional government, to the state government, and to the President of the United States.
Something that used to take hundreds of hours to do. So what a fantastic example there. We really do appreciate it. Patrick, so much activity going on over there. In respect to every federal cabinet level CIO, we know the deputy CIOs are doing the heavy lifting. Give us an example of a program that you'd like to highlight, part of that sort of overall composite of modernization activity you have going on over there that has really sort of enabled some of these things that you're pursuing.
Yeah, first I'll just say IT and digital modernization is a whole agency approach. You know, if we're going to upgrade or replace technologies, we just don't want to do it just do it. We want to also look at processes and policies that better support business. So and overall improve the entire organization. So when we can modernize our business processes and we can implement enabling new technologies, modern technologies that focuses on enhancing the user experience, that removes barriers to service to success. I can give you a good example of that, and is our implementation of a nationwide disability case processing system that essentially consolidated about 52 state disability determination services systems. So we embarked on having one integrated case processing system and migrating 52 states into that one processing system. So you can think about all the benefits of that, but it's not easy. It wasn't easy. It isn't easy. When you have states who are comfortable or familiar with their systems. But today, this is why I think this is very successful. Although we don't have all 52, we have 49 of those states on our system today with a clear plan to migrate the remaining states very soon. And so I think this is a case when you're talking about modernizing and integrating into one system, cloud-based system. I totally agree with everything Guy has been saying. We use cloud, use all the services and the goodness out of cloud as we modernize. But it's also allowed us to look at our business processes because we were able to develop new in the cloud, and we were able to streamline some business processes as well. So to me, this is one of the ones I see as very successful because it truly is in whole of agency approach to modernize.
What a way to enable so much capability across the country, and hats off to you. I commend you for being able to interact with every one of those states. Undoubtedly, each one of them having its own, we'll call it a journey, right? That you were on to make that happen. So I applaud you and your team for that. Jonathan, how about a BMC software? Give us an example of a program that you'd like to highlight that really sort of opened up some transformation at one of these agencies.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. We're seeing a theme if you listen across each one of these stories here, and I think I might be adding to the theme. So I want to share a story if I could. It's a pretty large nonprofit research and academic medical center that is located in Florida. It's called Tampa General Hospital. And I think this one's a great example of a few things. Seeing how people are coming together in a pretty collaborative way. They're focusing on delivering innovation. They're focusing on modernizing their organization in a very, very short window to overcome some pretty crazy stuff. Like Parth talked about, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about COVID as well. So this is like 3 years ago, I guess COVID hits. The world's kind of turned upside down. Everybody's scrambling, trying to figure out how to manage this thing. And if you think about it, hospitals are essentially at the core of it, right? They're challenged with resources. They're challenged with the equipment that they have, the rooms, the pure numbers of those that have been impacted by this, of course, was devastating, right? So to respond, Tampa General partners with some really smart folks from a company called SME Solutions Group, which I think is based in Tampa, a bunch of technology partners like BMC, and literally dozens of other hospitals, competing hospitals, by the way. I think it was like 50 or 51 hospitals. And they came together, they formed this group, and they said, hey, we need to find a way to come together to share the data that we have and ultimately tap into that data to create insights, to create intelligence that we desperately need to tackle COVID and to save lives, right? So through this collaboration, they were able to create essentially this dashboard that they called the COVID-19 Florida West Coast Regional Data Exchange. That's a mouthful, which basically provides things like real-time info on ventilator counts, the number of ICU rooms that are available, how many patients are impacted. They even went so far as to partner with a few cool tech companies to start forecasting the anticipated number of future COVID patients that they were going to have to deal with over a specified period of time. So if you can imagine insights like this, hospital officials at Tampa General and others could start really making awesome decisions to help patients find the care that they need at the right time, the right place. The problem was underneath that, of course, the underlying technology and the process required to support all this was crazy. We're talking about dozens of workflows across multiple disparate systems, hundreds of data sources from inside and outside the hospitals, constantly gathering new data. They were spending so much time managing jobs, troubleshooting problems, that they actually couldn't deliver it in the short window that they had. And they certainly couldn't do it with confidence and insights that they needed to, right? So to help, they shifted a great deal to great technology partners, again, like Databricks, like Control-M and BMC, for us specifically to monitor and start managing these complex data pipelines. They took out all of that manual intervention. They improved scalability, reliability, performance of their data pipelines, and they were ultimately able to get those insights delivered to the right people each and every day with a high degree of confidence. So again, it's just a really cool story. I think hopefully to add to the ones that you've already heard, but very relevant to us and a great sign of things to come, I think.
Great example of infusing some technology to really enable the mission. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking about IT modernization, digital transformation, etc. We're going to get into priorities. Guy, I'm going to start with you. Your number one priority for this year in regards to IT transformation.
Sure. Our number one priority is to move to the cloud. I have technology modernization funds for Zero Trust and for redoing .gov and our other initiatives, but the core theme out of all of them, Luke, is that we're no longer building on premise and everything's going to the cloud.
Full march to cloud, full stop. I love it. Michael, top priority from Verizon for this year.
Well, look, I'm going to cheat a little bit. And let me just say, we think there's 4 priorities that we see: cybersecurity, network backbone, the workforce, and the people. If I can sneak in 2, I'd say when we think about the workforce, large amounts of folks are still working remotely and they want the best experience. And so we're leveraging our 5G network, JD Power, #1 rated, to deliver fixed wireless access for those types of solutions. So we're excited about that, especially with our C-band deployment. And then lastly, it's about the people. So we're seeing a lot of interest in virtual contact center, right? The government's primary customer are the people. And so we think that virtual contact center delivers a solution that improves the customer experience, and that gets into everything we do: network as a service, fixed wireless access, secure cloud fabric, and more to make that happen. So we see those as pretty big priorities.
Appreciate that. Vaughn, top priority for EPA.
Yeah, I touched on it earlier, and we talked about the national digitization centers. Actually placing those digitization centers in production. We've got 2 of those. They'll go in production this year, and we'll start transferring paper files and start digitizing those files and making them available to the EPA employees so they can use that. And certainly, in addition to that priority is our continuing priority on focusing on the employees. And this is how we modernize, how we actually communicate to our employees, how we engage them. One of the things that we saw with the pandemic was it was no longer us trying to push features onto employees. It was them really getting the mode of accepting change, right? And so we want to continue with how we condition our employees to welcome change and how we evolve applications in that space to make them more productive.
All about being adaptive. Parth, number one priority.
Sure. Yeah, Luke. So what we are seeing in all of the agencies we are dealing with is really data estate modernization. And there's sub-bullets under that. Let me cover a couple there. As Guy was mentioning, we are seeing a push to the cloud, and not just sort of moving the systems that are on-prem into the cloud, but being truly cloud native, using what's there and the agility of the cloud to reduce cost while still driving mission outcomes. There's a focus on open source. There is a definite interest in the government to avoid any kind of vendor lock-in. So to be able to own your own data, to be able to own the code that you write to get insights out of that data is definitely part of it. There is building for roadmap, right? It is not enough to just do what you were doing today. You need to be able to ingest not just the structured data, but the unstructured data, the images, the documents, be able to ingest streaming data and apply artificial intelligence and machine learning against it. You want to be able to really empower the users in your agency, and you want to do it with self-service. But it is not enough to just provide self-service. How do you do it with governance, and how do you balance that? So these are some of the aspects of the data modernization that we are seeing come to the fore. And the Databricks Lakehouse is delivering on a lot of these requirements, as I had given an example earlier.
Sure. You really need those guardrails to enable that citizen service, citizen development. Patrick, top priority on this massive journey that you all are on.
Our customers expect faster service. Our employees need to support our customers, speed up their service. So our priority is to improve how our systems communicate and integrate. We want to eliminate silos in our technologies, use to support our core functions. And we want to build end-to-end processing systems, modernize those in the cloud base, leveraging the strength of the cloud, and mature our cloud framework within the agency. Those are our priorities.
Fantastic. Sounds massive, and I know you're up for it. Jonathan, top priority BMC.
Yeah, you bet. Very simply, three things: cloud, data, and agility. For cloud, look, if it wasn't hard enough to run applications between on-premise and one particular cloud type, now you've got to consider the orchestration of applications going across all three infrastructure models. For us, the question is, how are you going to do it and not create more silos of automation or orchestration? So how can we help with that? Second, on data. Look, many of the modern data initiatives haven't reached their full potential. The biggest hurdle, the ability to operationalize data initiatives, because of the high degree of complexity involved. So we're focused on how do we better simplify very complex data pipelines across those operational models to enable true scale and production. Last, agility. What we hear from customers is they want to go fast, but they also want to change direction pretty quickly. So for us, how do we make collaboration, which we think is a pretty strong component of that, across the teams, frictionless all the way from the design of the application to production? So those are our big three priorities.
Top three priorities. I do appreciate that. We're going to wrap it up here and paint a picture of the future, so to speak. Let's say 3 years out. Parth, we're going to start with you. What's the demand signal that you all are getting? Sort of where do you think you're going to be as far as the types of things that you'll be delivering 3 years from now?
Sure. I think step one is about getting the data curated and ready for driving insights. And again, as I had stated earlier, it's not just about the data that currently exists in the siloed databases that are on-prem, but moving into the cloud and organizing it in such a way that you can integrate it with not just structured data, but unstructured, semi-structured text, et cetera. There's going to be a push for every agency to have an always up-to-date data warehouse, if you will, a technology by which their insights are always fresh. Now, it's not enough to also be ready for business intelligence. The next step is machine learning and AI. And so the Lakehouse with Databricks actually enables the customer who is using the tooling to be ready for that roadmap event once they have the data organized. And the third thing, and I think an important one, we envision that the agencies are going to start to now look at sharing data once they have their data estates modernized in the cloud. And that's going to be critical to develop citizen outcomes. Just as a quick example, with CBP, Border Patrol, ICE and USCIS, there is a sharing mechanism in place with Databricks where they're sharing data and building this sort of customer 360 to improve the outcomes for the folks who are going through immigration, who are entering our borders from different countries. So this is really going to drive the innovation in the government in the next 2 to 3 years.
No question, and a lot of data being shared, but in a maybe not as advanced way that they could be doing it. I think Patrick pointed that out. Jonathan, 3 years from now, what does it look like as far as BMC is concerned?
Yeah, sure. So we believe that organizations that are succeeding in IT modernization are going to basically have 5 or 6 different attributes. And the cool thing is that you've heard all of them from this panel of great shops today, right? So the first one you heard from Patrick. Delivering a transcendent customer experience, being thoughtful about that customer experience from the beginning to the end. That's the first. The second, we believe organizations are going to be driving automation everywhere, specifically to free up sources of innovation, which we believe are, in fact, our people. Third, organizations will be embracing enterprise DevOps, but they'll be doing it, though, to unlock industrialized agility. It is a combination of the two things. Number 4, organizations are going to be maniacally focused on creating actionable insights with the mountains of data that we have at our fingertips. And then last but not least, organizations are going to be keeping organizations secure by focusing on really strong adaptive cybersecurity. This is our framework. We call it the Autonomous Digital Enterprise. It's the thing at BMC that is our North Star. It guides our product strategy. It guides the way that we service and focus on our customers and our partners. So that is what we look at as we look ahead for the next 2 to 5 years.
Really do appreciate that. Michael, you talked about 5G. I assume in 3 years, 5G will be fully realized. Are we talking 6G? Where does it end?
The G's will always progress and go beyond our wildest dreams. But, we see that, full use of 5G is potentially what's particularly out there, and that's exciting, right? We've done our C-band rollout. You're enabling private networks. You got on-site private networks, wireless networks that give you the security that you're looking for. We got our network as a service solutions, making sure things are faster, more secure, cloud-based. And we think of this aspect of partnerships, right? I heard a lot about it today. I heard a lot about it in other government forums, delivering faster data, lower latency. Imagine federal agencies that gather data from states being able to do so in, a nanosecond, right? Much faster time speed. And then I think about all of this creating better constituent services, right? Self-service enablement across the IRS, the postal, the DMV, wherever you go, your experience as a citizen of this country being much more accelerated, much more efficient, much better. Looking forward to it.
We really do appreciate that. And we're all looking forward to that. Guy, well, I know your track record, and I would say 3 years from now, certainly you're going to be fully in the cloud, native apps being built, et cetera, et cetera. If I'm a freshly minted retiree or a new employee coming into OPM and I look around, what's it going to look like 3 years from now? What's that experience going to be?
Yes, thank you for that support, Luke. I hope I can do it all in 3 years. There's a lot to modernize. One of the things I'm excited about, and we've heard it from the panel, one of the things we're revamping is the opm.gov website. When we ask our citizens to understand our org structure, to be able to know where to look for an answer versus being a user-centric experience. So in 3 years, we will see the OPM website change from being that very difficult to find anything website to having specific customer journeys, both for citizens, for people that are applying for jobs, for federal employees that are wanting to find what their benefits are, and then interchanging with other agencies. The other thing I'm very excited about, Luke, is the need for us to leverage cloud cybersecurity native capabilities to repel the artificial intelligence and machine learning attacks that our enemies will be using against government. We cannot match that level of power with humans behind screens. So the impact on cyber over the next 3 years of moving really to massive amounts of data, logging, analytics that would be too expensive to do on premise, and we already have executive orders telling us to do this. I think that's going to be an impact on the cyber end. Our citizens expect us to protect their data, and if we don't get ahead of the hackers and use the maximum tools to protect our data, we'll always be on the losing end.
Absolutely, and we have 100% confidence in you. Patrick, once again, I want to commend you. Going hand to hand with each state and getting them connected is a daunting task, and I'm sure you would have loved to have just sort of plugged and played that. But you got it done. 3 years from now, you're going to have a lot more of these train tracks laid down. What are you expecting to see 3 years from now?
Well, I'm expecting to see 3 years from now that members of the public, you and I, will be able to address most of our needs online on a mobile device, not having to come to an office or visit a field office or a hearing office, not needing to send documents, mail documents into an office. 3 years from now, I see if you want to transact business with us online, you'll be able to do the main programs. And if you want to come in office, you'll have better service, equitable services, no matter what channel you choose. 3 years from now, I also see our employees to be able to quickly connect and collaborate with their colleagues to deliver their mission. We've deployed some capabilities. The Microsoft team is our primary collaboration. But on the processing systems that we use to service our customer, I see the ability for our employees to, in 3 years from now, to be more integrated as we integrate our systems and have a 360 view of our customers so that we're better able to process and claims and support them, all while operating in the cloud and having the scalability to change directions should business direction requires. So I see us more adaptable, flexible, leveraging the technologies that are out there today and applying the processes to support that.
I really do appreciate it, and we look forward to that. Vaughn.
Yeah, so mine's really easy. In 3 years, I'd like to see all paper-based activities eliminated from the EPA. We are the EPA, which means how we acquire, how we store, how we transform, how we present, and ultimately how we make informed recommendations or decisions is on data that's in a digital format, right? I would love to see the day where we no longer have to do data calls to find out where data is or what information exists within the agency. It's available instantaneous for folks to use.
And no doubt that as you get all that paper, we'll call it, forms into this digital environment, you're also modernizing these environments. So you start digital, you stay digital. So would you expect 3 years from now that you'll be there?
Well, they're wildly important goals, right? And so part of what we've done now is set the framework for it.
Yep.
And we're working with the teams to see where we can work with the stakeholders within the agency, identifying those information collection requests that exist within a paper-based form and start converting those. For all new data that's coming to the agency, you need to start out digitally, right? So it's two-step. It's identifying what's currently out there that's not a digital, that's not digitally acquired. Mm-hmm. That, and then make sure that for all future data collections that we acquire and store them in a digital native format.
We have 100% confidence in you doing that. We really do appreciate everything that you're doing there. An extremely important agency. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for this program. I'd like to thank the sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd also like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make our program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank you, the listening audience, that tune in every month. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.